Welcome everybody to another webinar from Into the Block. I'm Gabriel. I work on the research team here at Into the Block. And today we're going to be talking about the restaking boom. So specifically about Eigenlayer, which I'm sure most of you have heard about either through social media or through other different venues. We've been doing a lot of research into Eigenlayer, how it works, and what sort of implications it has on Ethereum ecosystem as a whole. And so we'll dive into that today to introduce Eigenlayer, look at how it's grown so quickly, especially in the last couple of months. We'll also explore liquid restaking tokens and look at some of the risks that pertain to Eigenlayer specifically, and then also the liquid restaking tokens. Then we'll finish up with looking at what other restaking possibilities are beyond Eigenlayer, since it's not just exclusive to Eigenlayer itself, and then finish with a little summary of the conclusion. Anyways, let's get started. But before we jump into Eigenlayer, as always, a quick update about Into the Block. To start with, we launched a new risk radar recently. So risk radar are our economic risk dashboards for specific protocols. This one is for Stakewise v3. Stakewise is a liquid staking token protocol that has a pretty innovative structure. I recommend checking it out. A lot of metrics that focus on liquid staking tokens as a whole, but then also specifically to Stakewise itself. Yesterday, we also launched a perspectives dashboard on the Tron ecosystem. Quite interesting. There's not a lot of places to find interesting metrics on Tron tokens. There's some pretty interesting things on the Tron tokens themselves, and then also specifically USDT and USDT's impact within the Tron ecosystem. Recommend to check it out. And then finally, we've also recently launched a dashboard on Eigenlayer and restaking. A lot of the charts that I'll go over today are in that dashboard, but definitely check out the perspectives dashboard on this, where you can look at different timeframes and lengths of time on these different charts. So without further ado, let's dive in to Eigenlayer and restaking in general. To give an easy summary, because Eigenlayer is quite a complex infrastructure protocol, and it has a lot of different components, and each of these components have been researched pretty thoroughly by either Eigenlayer or even the Ethereum Foundation. But a good way to summarize it is by these two pieces of Eigenlayer. So the first is restaking. So what essentially Eigenlayer allows is for staked ETH to be reused to secure new applications that are built on top of Eigenlayer. These applications are called actively validated services. So you can think of them kind of as like another protocol or dApp. They have a different name because of how the structure is, but you can see it as an equivalent. And these are built on top of Eigenlayer using the restaked ETH to secure the protocol and implement services on Ethereum, but also on other blockchains as well, which we'll dive into a little more later. The thing that I would like to highlight here, which is I think a pretty good quote from the founder of Eigenlayer, is that the idea behind it is that it's a marketplace for decentralized trust. So essentially, what ETH as the Ethereum blockchain brings to Eigenlayer is a trusted community and a trusted network. This is very hard to bootstrap. And so these AVSs are able to borrow this security to bootstrap their own networks or community through this, and then they pay some fees, as we'll go into in further detail later on. To start, how does restaking work? So it's pretty simple. Essentially, you either take staked ETH. So the idea behind native staked ETH would be if you were a validator, for example, you would, in a sense, deposit your staked ETH into Eigenlayer, and then you'd be able to use that 32 ETH to then secure these AVSs that are on top of Eigenlayer. You can also deposit liquid staking tokens such as STETH, RETH, OSETH directly into the Eigenlayer protocol. And that way you are also able to use that staked ETH as restaked ETH. Then what occurs is that these AVSs, they pay the restakers. Essentially, they rent the security from Ethereum to bootstrap their project, and the validators. So in the context of the native ETH stakers, but also with the LSTs, the validators that are restaked into Eigenlayer perform some additional duties similar to proposing blockchains and proposing blocks and validating blocks at the beacon chain layer of the Ethereum network. These validators perform additional duties and receive fees from the AVSs for performing these duties. And if these validators incorrectly perform the duties, or they perform some sort of malevolent behavior, this restaked ETH can be penalized and slashed exactly the same as you would see on the staked ETH on the Ethereum blockchain. For how slashing works, it is quite technical, but we'll just give a little overview of it right now, which is that when a proposer when a validator restakes their ETH, instead of having the validator position have its withdrawal address pointed to their own address, it points to an eigenpod address, and this allows Eigenlayer to slash this restaked ETH if the validator does not perform its duties correctly. So each validator on Eigenlayer sets up an agreement with the AVSs that they decide to secure with their restaked ETH. And with these agreements, essentially, if they don't perform the duties that they said that they were going to, their restaked ETH can be slashed. And so when they go to withdraw from the eigenpod, they can only take out the amount of ETH that hasn't been slashed yet. So the main question is, who benefits? Who benefits from Eigenlayer and these AVSs? So of course, the AVSs, very, very quickly, they are benefiting from Eigenlayer because they're able to bootstrap security quite quickly. So to build up this trust ecosystem, this network that Ethereum has done, as we can see, it takes many years. It can take a lot of capital. It's quite difficult, and it can be very expensive to maintain. And so this offers the AVSs an opportunity to quickly bootstrap some security by renting the security essentially from Ethereum. And it allows them to start small, and then they can also scale this much quicker as they start to grow. Also, it's lower cost, as I mentioned, to rent this security rather than try to create your own L1 or even L2 and maintain the security on this front. So if you think about the Cosmos ecosystem, each of these chains on the Cosmos ecosystem are their own L1, and they have to pay tokens to the stakers, which can be quite costly and takes up a lot of their budget. The AVSs can avoid this by just paying the fees directly to Ethereum restakers. For Ethereum restakers, it's pretty simple. You will be getting additional yields through the fees that the actively validated services are paying. But on top of that, These AVSs, now they don't need to have their own token, but there is a way for them to have their own token in a dual token setup that I'll explain later. So if you are restaking and securing these AVSs and they decide to launch a token, you also have the potential of airdrops, which is of course quite interesting and is part of the big narrative at the moment right now. And then lastly, the protocols, the blockchains that would be using these AVSs. So some of the things that we'll dive into later is that they can provide cheaper or even currently unavailable services. And this can make it a lot more affordable for L2s or even other L1s or just protocols themselves to get data, to perform tasks that they currently weren't able to do or was quite expensive and took up a lot of their revenues to perform these tasks. So diving into actively validated services, the possibilities are essentially endless. So restaking is a bit the Trojan horse to get people into this ecosystem on top of Eigenlayer that has no limits. It can essentially have anything occur on this Eigenlayer level within the Ethereum ecosystem. So one thing that it does is that it opens up opportunities for services that need security from Ethereum, but or they needed security in general, but they don't necessarily need a token or build their own blockchain to perform this. I'll explain some of them in the next slide. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there is this possibility of dual token staking, which since Eigenlayer is not live yet, and so none of these AVSs are live. It's still unclear what sort of possibilities can arrive from this, but with a dual token staking setup, there is additional potential ways that these AVSs can secure their own blockchains or secure their services by using both a token of their own and restaked ETH, maybe reducing risks for the restaked ETH users, which we will see as Eigenlayer launches in hopefully the coming months. With the possibilities of actively validated services that can arise, and some that will surely launch when Eigenlayer launches, is data availability. So if you think of Celestia, the exact same setup of data availability for L2s or other rollups is available through Eigenlayer, and actually the Eigenlayer team is developing their own EigenDA rollups. So instead of creating some sort of rollup as you have seen with Arbitrum or Optimism, that they have to create their own security system and then pass information back to Ethereum mainnet, these rollups could essentially be built on top of Eigenlayer and perform very specific tasks that maybe don't require an entire ecosystem like Arbitrum or Optimism or other rollups that we know of, but still operate within the Ethereum ecosystem. L1s are layer ones, so something like Ethereum blockchain or Solana, those are L1s. Layer 2s are something like Arbitrum or Optimism that are built on top of the first layer, which is Ethereum. So coming to that point, ETH secured L1s. Now this is something that hasn't shown itself yet, but could be quite interesting. An example for this is there could be a Cosmos ecosystem blockchain that instead of creating their own token to secure their blockchain, rent security from Ethereum to secure this blockchain. There are some blockchains that are potentially going to be doing that. That would be, we'll see if it happens, but it would be an interesting possibility for an actively validated service. Watchtowers and sequencers are essentially two different types of infrastructure that help pass information and validate information between Ethereum and layer 2 blockchains. And so at the moment, for example, with Arbitrum or Optimism, they have one or very few sequencers that are basically a set of trusted validator nodes that are confirming that the information passed between the two blockchains is correct. But sequencers and watchtowers that are decentralized and built upon Eigenlayer could provide that service to multiple blockchains and provide a second sequencer to help decentralize the information passing between the two blockchains. And then another one that could be quite interesting is coprocessors or computational power for AVSs. So at the moment, it's quite expensive to do complicated computations on chain. And so what this would allow is for some sort of computations to be done off-chain that then they provide some sort of proof of this computation happening, and then this would be able to be used in a blockchain. So an example of this is if you wanted to create some sort of machine learning model that is doing trading on Uniswap. The computations for the machine learning model might be quite expensive, but if you are able to do these off-chain and then validate and prove that they have been done through an AVS, you'd be able to create a machine learning model that can learn and make trades on Uniswap in the future. So diving into the excitement around Eigenlayer, I'll just put this chart up here because I think it explains itself. It is a infrastructure service that has been gaining a lot of traction and a lot of excitement. As we can see here, since the beginning of this year, it's grown almost 9 billion in total value locked, which is in the form of either native ETH or LSTs. So there's a lot of interest in it and a lot of excitement around the Eigenlayer launching. To dive a little bit further into these details, if you want to post some of these questions into the Q&A, I'll jump back into them at the end. We'll move through to make sure that we cover everything, and then I'll definitely answer these questions at the end. To dive into the summaries of the restaked ETH, 2.5% about of all ETH is restaked currently, and while that sounds small for a service that hasn't launched yet, this is quite a lot. And seeing how the trends were, for example, STETH, and how quickly it started to grow and hold a lot of all of the ETH existing, I think there's a chance that we could see some similar pattern for Eigenlayer. Interestingly, a lot of it is natively restaked or with STETH, which isn't a surprise, but also there are some liquid staking tokens that don't have a large distribution, a large market share as a liquid staking token, but they have a large market share in Eigenlayer. So examples of this are like the Mantle-based Mantle ETH. This has a large market share. Also Swell ETH. So it gives indications of maybe what these LSTs might be looking to do in the future in terms of how they will position themselves in the market. And very interesting to continue watching how those dynamics change moving forward. So jumping into liquid restaking tokens and the general risks. Liquid restaking tokens, it's pretty easy. It's almost akin to liquid staking tokens. You are able to deposit into these protocols, like the ones you see on the list here. And the ETH that you deposit will be restaked, and then you get a liquid restaking token that then you can use in DeFi, such as deploying into an AMM or using it for lending or other strategies that you might have. These LRT protocols will choose the AVSs that they decide to support. This will likely be in the form of a DAO that is voted upon, which AVSs they decide to support. Might not be exactly that at the beginning, but once they launch their own native tokens, which I assume most of them will, these will then be used to vote on the AVSs they choose. Unlike liquid staking tokens, LRTs will likely be heterogeneous because they will each choose which AVSs that they want to help validate. And they will be focused more on the risk and returns of validating different AVSs. So you'll see maybe EtherFi will pick a couple that they decide to validate. I know that they just recently announced that they were already allocating 600 million of their restaked ETH to the Omni chain, which is going to be a roll-up service on Eigenlayer. And so what we'll see is instead of a market leader, the first mover like Lido for liquid staking tokens, taking up a huge amount of the market share, I imagine that there will be maybe 3 or 4 of these liquid staking protocols that are validating different AVSs. And so depending on people's risk and return profiles, will decide to allocate their tokens to one or the other. The question is now, do infinite sum games in these AVSs equate to infinite risks? To highlight some of these risks, we'll start with one that has been a criticism that has been circulating quite a lot on Twitter, which is rehypothecation. So the claim is that Eigenlayer rehypothecates ETH security by double allocating essentially the security to these AVSs. So not only is it securing the blockchain, but it's also securing these different AVSs. And this could essentially create this leveraged security system that's quite fragile. And so if there is some sort of slashing event on the AVSs, that reduces the security that is securing the Ethereum blockchain itself, which in a response, the stakers do control the staked ETH and the restaked ETH that they use, and they have the autonomy to choose the AVSs they secure if they are operating their own validator, or choose the AVSs that they secure through the LRT protocol. And then if they don't like what the LRT protocol is securing, they could, switch to another one. And an important note is that restaked ETH cannot be added back into Eigenlayer. So this is where, you could really see some rehypothecation where you get an LRT token that is then deposited back into Eigenlayer as another ETH being restaked. This is not possible. I imagine it's something that they will decide not to do. So this kind of mitigates the rehypothecation worries. Incentive misalignment with Ethereum. This is something that every time a new innovation happens on Ethereum, there is this sort of issue that comes along. So MEV and MEV Boost had its own issues at the beginning, or there was some talk about it then. Same with Eigenlayer. So specifically, chronic distortions. So this is the idea that there would be over time centralization risks that occur because any sort of solo validator, solo staker that can't meet what is at that point considered the risk-free interest rate of rewards for the ETH that they are using to validate the blockchain and restaking, they will capitulate. They will exit validating Ethereum blockchain, and they'll either just join another validator or another node that is validating the blockchain, or they won't use their ETH to stake to secure the blockchain. The other one that we'll talk about in the next slide as well is the acute distortions. So what happens if there's a large slashing event? So let's say on Eigenlayer, 10 million ETH is slashed because of some sort of AVS issues. Then there becomes the question of, does Ethereum or Eigenlayer decide to fork and forgive all those people that were slashed? Or do they let the slash happen, which then could pose risks to the blockchain and Eigenlayer as a whole? Which brings us to the risks of AVS. There are many risks, but I think the biggest ones are slash risks and exploit risks. The slash risks are big now because they can be up to all 32 ETH staked in a validator at the moment. Now, I imagine that there will be more details given with Eigenlayer as it gets closer to launch. And different AVSs will probably design their slashing mechanisms in a way that is not going to slash all the ETH that is in a validator at any given point if they misbehave or do improperly perform their duties. The one that I think is always a worry, and even more so with this innovative technology that is Eigenlayer and AVSs, is an exploit risk, where it could easily be that one of these AVSs becomes quite big, but there's an issue with its code, it gets exploited. How will this affect the Eigenlayer ecosystem as well as the Ethereum ecosystem is an important question to ask. And then with the liquid restaking tokens, they have their own risks. Exploit risks, of course, are always a given in DeFi. Depegging risks, I think these can be quite substantial, and we will probably see some sort of depegging event, like as we saw with STETH back in 2022, that there will be a large LRT token that depegs, and this can exacerbate other risks, such as DeFi liquidations, where people have maybe leveraged their LRTs by lending it and borrowing ETH, and then repeating this process, where we might see a lot of liquidations in the DeFi ecosystem as a whole. Now, moving on to beyond Eigenlayer, since it isn't the only restaking option that there is, there are some other things that are being created that are restaking or restaking adjacent, I would say. So restaking can occur on any proof of stake chain. And there is currently work being done in Solana and Avalanche and possibly some other layer one blockchains. Another thing that has been just recently proposed by the Ethereum Foundation is what they call rainbow staking, which is what you see in the chart on this slide, which is essentially kind of separating all of the tasks that are performed by validators in a way where maybe some tasks that are more heavy duty are performed by a certain group that are more efficient, but other tasks that are maybe not as complicated, but are important to the decentralization of Ethereum are performed by another set. And in this, you might see some things that would be similar to like enshrined restaking, let's say, within the Ethereum blockchain. And then additionally, somewhat similar, a little bit tangential to restaking, is the Babylon chain on Cosmos is looking to do a similar security design as Eigenlayer is with Ethereum, but with Bitcoin. So any Bitcoin holders out there might want to look into that and see what they're working on, because it's pretty cool as well. To summarize, Eigenlayer is a new middleware primitive, and it's going to change how we interact with Ethereum. It's going to change the dynamics of Ethereum, how incentives are created, how interactions between different protocols and blockchains operate. So it's very interesting. It's very cool. It's something to keep an eye on. The rapid TVL growth is a very easy indicator to show that the Ethereum community, as well as other blockchains, are quite excited about what's happening there, and they see that there is the potential for large opportunities. And then the AVSs are quite interesting because they're going to be able to provide novel services that have not yet been seen on Ethereum, that could really be a order of magnitude increase in what's capable on the blockchain. But of course, great possibilities come with great risks. There are some pretty potential big risks that can happen that are worth watching out for. But in the end, restaking adoption isn't slowing down. So jump on the train, or at least read up more about it, and check out the Perspectives dashboard that gives a lot more insights into Eigenlayer specifically. That's the end of the webinar. Our next webinar is on March 27th. It's talking about stablecoins and how they have come back in a big way into DeFi. So make sure to sign up. We'll be adding a link to the sign up in the chat, and I'm sure you'll be receiving an email as well about it. That is it. Let's move to questions.